Good evening. We're talking to the 912 group tonight. I want to thank each of you for being here for this forum for the City Council. This is going to be a little bit different than I think probably any forum you've been to and probably any forum you'll go to. We were anticipating a bigger crowd, and we were kind of scheduling things down to a very tight schedule, but since we ended up with a smaller group, that gives us more flexibility. And with what we hope to do is have a discussion time. This is not going to be a question and answer examination of what do you think about this, what do you think about that. We have some questions and issues that we would like to discuss, but we'd like you to discuss them. You have to remember, we are not a political group. We're apolitical. We do not endorse any candidate for any office of any kind. We may personally have our own choices. As a group, we do not endorse and do not support. So you are be making your positions, your interests, and how you present yourselves to the public for them to assess. And our voting public, they are quite intelligent and able to make their own decisions, not what we say. So this is your opportunity to present yourself to the voting public. And we have a very good audience. Going through Mesa Media here, they have quite a contact throughout the county, and so you will be observed by quite a large section of the county, and better opportunity this way than probably have an open door. Later next month, as you know, we will be having a opportunity for the public to be in the room here and address you personally and buttonhole you and say, what did you say last time? They got you. But anyway, that's kind of how we're going to do this tonight. And as far as the discussion goes, we will give some leading questions to get you discussing. And we're not going to try to force each of you to speak. If you don't want to answer, you don't have to answer. But we'd like you to interchange between yourselves, because one of the things is you've got 5 seats coming up in the city. There's 14 people running. Right now here we got, what, 6 of you here? Those 5 seats are going to be filled by people that's going to have to be working together. And you're going to be exchanging, and you think you can work with each other here? Boy, I don't know. But you're very possibly 5 of you right here may be in those 5 seats. You don't know. I was just telling Bud, we need one thing to think of. We're looking at the city council coming up. We're going to have a couple seats on the county board of supervisors. There's a lot of issues between the two, and well, this is real important right now. The city really is about 1/3 population of the entire county, and some people kind of think it's more important than the county. A lot of arguments about that. Okay, how about we get started by you introducing yourselves, and that we will give you a little lead on. Well, let's start over here, Mr. O'Brien.
My name is Rafe O'Brien. I was born and raised here, 30 years old. I really, really love our community. I love Cortez. I went to culinary arts school and got my associate's degree. I also have a daughter that attends Mana here, and I also race out at the racetrack doing dirt track stuff. It's just a great place for me to be, and I just want to try to make a change in our community.
I should have asked the question too. When you do this, introduce yourself. Finish off with, why do you want to be on the city council?
I want to be on the city council because I've seen the change in our community for the last, again, 30 years of living here. Maybe not so much little, but I do see the change and where we're going, and some of it is not truly represented by our city council, with what I'm told from people coming up to me or just talking to people. So I truly feel like me being a younger, not quite as, I guess, in depth with some of the things that some people are in would give me a good outside, just like any normal person. So that's why I want to run, is just to give the regular person a chance to have a voice through me, maybe.
Rachel?
Great. Okay, I've written a little introduction. So my name is Rachel Medina, and I'm running for city council. I know I will be a good city council member because I've always loved helping others and being actively involved in my community. I've always prided myself in being a good listener and making friends with people of all backgrounds. So I think I would work well in a team. I believe now is the time for us to come together to support our diverse community interests while planning for the future and protecting our rural character. A little about me: I've moved to Cortez 4 years ago to take a position with Montezuma County in the mapping and addressing department. I work closely with the planning department, the assessor's office, and the Office of Emergency Management. My job at the county has taught me a lot about local government, and it's what motivated me to get involved as a citizen in the city of Cortez. So in late 2016, I joined the Cortez Parks and Recreation Board and was later appointed the chair of that board for 2 years in a row. I was the youngest chair of any board or commission in the history of Cortez so far. And in 2017, I joined the city's Planning and Zoning Commission, utilizing my understanding of development processes, zoning designations, and survey plat reviews. Also in 2017, I became a volunteer to our local Montezuma County Search and Rescue team, later becoming their secretary for the last few years. Every organization I've been involved in has recognized my dedication and has led to greater responsibilities within each. To better prepare myself for City Council and gain greater knowledge of the city, I've been meeting individually with each department head to ask questions and gain a better understanding of their roles and their perspectives. Through these endeavors, I have learned a lot about our community and the services our city provides. I want to bring experience and accountability to City Council. I'm ready to work hard for my constituents and come to every meeting prepared to make informed decisions. I also want to focus on long-term planning and economic development for our community. Many of our residents travel to surrounding communities for work because there's not enough various industries or stable, decent-paying jobs here. And residents and young families struggles to make ends meet, let alone have money for down payments on houses. And I want to help make affordable housing options more accessible to our residents, and I also want to help keep costs reasonable for our developers. I would love to see a joint city and county economic development task force that could address these issues. And I think if we have a better understanding of the financial burdens and the roadblocks of our business owners and our developers and the consumers, then we can really come together for options for our community. Each stakeholder has a story, and we need to hear that so that we can work together on the best plans for our future. And I have the privilege of working with our county commissioners regularly, and so I think I could use these fostered relationships to help the City Council work well with the county, because I think that both are important in this role. So thank you. Sorry if that was long.
That's all right. We'll find out who you are.
Try this again. My name is Jason Witt. I have lived here in Cortez. 8 inches? Is that better? Okay. I'm used to the high school mics that if you're not right on top of them, they're really bad, so I apologize. Again, my name is Jason Witt. I lived here in Cortez for 9 years. I grew up in a small rural community of Summit County, Colorado, about the same size as what Montezuma County is. I want to take the last part first, if I may, is why I want to be on the City Council. When I came to Cortez a decade ago, I fell in love with the city. It's a beautiful little city. And I've lived all over the U.S. chasing jobs or another restaurant here or another industry there. And when I got here, I knew that this would be the place that I wanted to stay. And I knew this was a place that I could get involved in through the community volunteering programs. And eventually I had a goal to be, on the City Council. As cheeky as it sounds, I told my wife one day that, I could really see myself running as mayor one day. And this is well before I knew the ins and outs of the city, because I loved it so much. I knew that in order to make a difference, you had to be involved. And with the land use code issues coming up and having the opportunity to be part of the Realtors task group that we put together to help educate the community and educate my Realtors, I saw the need for good service in the city council. Somebody that listens to the people, somebody that wants to be an advocate for the community, to be the servant leader that the community deserves. And that's why I chose to run for city council. You know, I wanted to be supportive. I wanted to be an advocate of responsible government. I wanted to be able to show that by being a new member of the community, or a new member of the city council, that I could make a difference. And I want to make a difference. But the most important thing is the people of the community. Nothing is done without them. The reason we're here is because of them. They are the reason. They are the boss. And it is our job to pay attention to them, to listen to them. And I also think it's very important that we are still part of a county. We need to be part of that county and to listen to that county and to collaborate with that county and make sure that we are one voice. Margaret Whitney is one of, she stated that there is no power for change greater than the community discovering what it cares about. And I believe that through this land use code, the community was awakened a bit. We saw the turnouts that we had. We saw there's 14 people that are running for city council. That is great. That is awesome. You know, I want to see the 5 best. If I'm not the 5 best, one of those 5, which I think that I am, I want the 5 best to be on there because I'm a citizen and I want to be well represented. And one thing that I've discovered is that we have 14 very, very smart people, and we are lucky to have these people. I know that I'm rambling, and I'm sorry, but you know, I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful for everybody that's here because they make me a smarter person. Our city is a great city. It has some of the greatest people I know, and it is the gift of these great people because they recognize good in others, and that is our community, and that is what makes us strong, is our community. Our strength is in our community.
Okay, Sue?
Hi, my name is Sue Betts, and I presently am sitting on a chair in the city council. When I decided to run for city council 2 years ago, it was because I felt that I could make a difference. I had, for quite a while before I ran, I'd walk up and down Main Street, and I just had that feeling that, you know, this isn't the Main Street that I'm used to walking. I started to feel more like I was walking downtown Durango. And I got to thinking about that, and the more I thought about it, I thought, well, you know, I've lived in this area since 1983. Prior to that, I lived in Archuleta County. Archuleta County was once a very small town too, and people dreamed about Fairfield coming in, and Fairfield did come in, and the growth was just enormous. The taxes went sky high. Pretty soon, all the new people had their ideas in there, and the people who actually founded the town and lived in the town throughout the years were taxed to the point that a lot of them just no longer could afford to live there. And I felt like, you know, we don't want to see that happen in Cortez. We watched it happen in Telluride, Silverton, Pagosa. You know, let's see if we can't stop that. So I went on ahead, I ran, with the hopes, like I said, that I could actually help some. And once I got on, the very first council meeting that I went to, it was on the median project. And I immediately spoke everything I had to say about the medians, because after being a police officer for 29 years in the city of Cortez, I knew what driving down Main Street was like. And basically, I lost. You know, there's 7 of us. Not everybody felt the same way that I did. It was a 4-3 vote. I'll tell you, I didn't want the medians. I still say the medians are ugly, but we have them. Okay? Anyway, throughout the 2 years, we had several incidents like that. The last one was the land code. And immediately, I said, when they gave me the land code and I started reading it, this is way too rigid. We don't need this in Cortez. This would make us look like the worst possible HOA anybody could ask for. And it would be the whole town. We would be the HOA for the whole town. Well, that's not going to help Cortez. We need more affordable housing. We need more employment. Employment in this area is vital. If we could get some more businesses, get people interested in putting businesses in here, it would be wonderful. But I also noticed in those 2 years an awful lot of the stuff that we were doing or that had been done had been contracted out to areas like Denver and, you know, outside of Cortez business people. Well, now we're giving Cortez money out to everybody. So I know sometimes we don't have the manpower here to handle all of the jobs that we have to do. But, you know, we can look at the native population. Most of the tribal areas, they have job preference. If they hire a job out to somebody, so many jobs, they're required to hire so many people to cover those jobs if those people qualify. And there's many people in Cortez without jobs that could qualify for those jobs. And so that's one of the ideas that I have for Cortez. And the housing, you know, it is going to be, it's going to be tough for a while. We just don't have enough low income. But I think if we can get more jobs going and quit contracting everything out of Cortez and try and keep our money here at home, it would really help. I see other problems that we have, and problems like our water lines in Cortez, our infrastructure, getting tongue-tied. You know, we've had some pretty bad water breaks, and the water is turned back on when they get the breaks back together. And the water is dirty. It looks dirty. And they say, oh, go on ahead and drink it. It'll be okay. Well, you know, I lived on a river, and we never drank brown water. So I really think that those old pipes, that is something that we definitely have to work on. We have got to do something with some of the older stuff in town. Because if we don't take care of it, in the future, all the nice new things in the future are soon going to be old, and everything's going to be old. So, you know, we've got to keep up with what we already have, and we only have a limited amount of money. One of the problems that was also brought up was we couldn't give raises to anybody this year. Well, you know, you can't give raises when you don't know what you have in a budget. And with an embezzlement thing that was going on, none of us can say what we had. So nobody got raises.
Can you please hold the mic on the table?
There you go.
Sure. Oh, okay. Sure. No problem. Anyway, that caused, you know, grief. But my idea is Cortez is beautiful. Cortez is my community. I love to talk to the people. I go to the grocery store. I can't do a 15-minute shop like I used to years ago. I'm in the grocery store for an hour or two sometimes. Walmart, same thing. I talk to people. I love to talk to people. And the people tell me what they want. And what I've tried to do in the last 2 years is do what the people wanted. And if it meant that I was up against opposition and it made me the no man, I was the no man.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Stephanie now, see who she is.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Carver, and I am a resident of Cortez. I've been here all my life. I think the reason I didn't set out kind of purposely to run for city council, it's never kind of been a goal that I had set. So kind of by accident with the 5 seats that opened up. And I had thought about it before, but it wasn't something that, you know, I had on my radar necessarily. So when I decided to go ahead and put my petition in, I got a lot of support from friends that, you know, kind of surprised me, and family and stuff like that. So I thought, well, maybe this is a good fit, but I feel like my experience with some of the challenges that I've had in Montezuma County, raising kids, you know, for a long time I worked in the restaurant industry, and a lot of that was hard work. And so I worked to get out of that. And so I got a profession, I got a job in several different things. I have a mortgage background, and the bulk of my career has been in the insurance industry, which taught me a lot. A lot of things on the back end of businesses that you don't think about. I worked with a lot of contractors, I worked with schools, I worked with fire departments. You know, everybody's got to have the trip and fall insurance. They've got to have professional liability depending on what they're doing, and they all have to pay those bills. And they're paying them just like everybody else, having to come up with that money month by month. But getting to develop a lot of those relationships with a lot of local contractors, a lot of local businesses, was really a good experience. I also had a business networking group that I was a part of, and I became the director of the Cortez and the Durango chapters by accident. But it was a great group of people. It was based on a giver's gain type of attitude, and what we tried to do was inform people of what our products and services are so that they can go out and refer people to our businesses to help them grow. And it was very structured, and there's a lot to it, but I really enjoyed that all the way. I met a lot of great people. So the part about the downtown, I think we could have a lot better, more vibrant downtown, a lot of different things that could come in, and that maybe council could be supportive in a cash downtown day, anything that they try to do to bring cash and attention to people going out and spending their money. And bringing their cash in, from what I understand, is an incentive for some businesses versus the debit cards and the credit cards. I'm not sure about that. You might know. But you know, things like that we could collaborate with in any way, I think is important. So also, you know, being on board with what's going on in the county and the growth and the need for looking ahead, I think is something that, you know, definitely interests me. And like Sue was saying about the maintenance of everything, and we kind of learned at the meeting the other night about, you know, a lot of this money has to come from, where does it come from? A lot of different areas, and it's expensive to maintain. Rural communities are really experiencing that because things wear out. Sanitation is important. Those have to be updated. That costs a lot of money. If you're spending money in other areas, you know, we've got to be aware of how to budget. And so I'm hoping that I can apply some of my experiences to be of service to the community. Thank you.
Very good. Justin, who are you, and what do you want to be on the city council?
Who am I? Hey, everybody. My name is Justin Basterling. I am the general manager of the Holiday Inn Express here in Cortez. I oversee operations at the Retro Inn, formerly American Garden Inn, and historically the Bell Row, which is a piece of our history here. I also oversee the Destination Grill, which everyone probably remembers as Coco's. I have lots of experience with financials, budgets, P&Ls, and if you don't, if those words don't really make a lot of, you can't unpack that yourself. It basically means being able to take a ship with a bunch of people on it and it not sink, and get it to where it needs to go with everybody sane and everybody happy. It can be a challenge on the easiest day. On top of that, one of the things I'm most proud of is to take an investment, and there's a lot of fingers to things like that. There are the shareholders or the investors, which would probably be our community, for sure. And there are lots of overlaps with running a business that can help, but honestly, I think I'm more qualified to be a city manager than a city councilman. But one of the things I like about my career is I get to actually show people that we care. And it's a very measurable metric, so we can interact with, I think we broke almost 500,000 in a couple years of people we touch, whose lives we touch between the 3 properties. And I look at it in a very interesting way. So all of our properties are winning awards. I'm not really bragging about that. The thing that's most important about that is the people. Our team, our group of employees, from our housekeeping department to our sales directors to servers and everything, it's getting a bunch of people to see something more than a time clock, or more than that time at work is time away from family, and to try and achieve something awesome. And we've achieved some really incredible things, all of us have. And I think the important part about that is you don't achieve medals and awards and great numbers, 25% food cost. I don't know if anyone knows, that's a good metric, that's a good number. Without knowing how to work with people. The answer isn't fire someone. The answer isn't accuse people or demand accountability. And when I hear things like that, and I heard some of that the other night, it freaks me out a tiny bit when you see someone throwing anger around at their employees or pointing fingers at people who are trying to do a good job. I think leadership and character are the real issues we're looking at. I think we could all work together. I know I could work with anybody and have worked with anybody. I mean, I've worked with some real villains. And the things you can learn by working with a villain will serve you the rest of your life. It's easy to work with good people, and I think we got a lot of good people. I was asked to run, and I didn't think it would be a good idea. I'm not really a selfless person. I'm a very selfish person. I like my time. I guard it. I get so very little of it that I'm kind of jealous of it. And I realized a lot of stuff on my journey, and I haven't really been in a position to give back to the community, to the people that are giving to me, to law enforcement, to our city officials, to the garbage man. And I understood, I decided to watch some of the only, I think I might be the only view on a lot of city council episodes. You guys, there were a couple that haven't been seen, that had 0 views. So I threw some ones on there. And I watched every city council episode back to 2017, Sue, and I mean, when I was watching, I mean, I've watched some episodes, and when I first went into city council, it was kind of like meeting all the actors from Game of Thrones. I'm a little starstruck to see everybody because I've spent so much time in front of the dang TV watching city council episodes. What I came to after doing that is I can help. There's some crazy stuff that goes on. There's some silly stuff that goes on. There's a lot of stuff that flies right by that shouldn't, in my opinion. There's some better ways we can use our time as a city to help everybody. I believe that, and I know I can help us. And that's really the reason I ran. I wasn't going to if I didn't think I could add to the conversation and bring people together. I know that can happen, and I think there are places where I can literally benefit the city by looking at things more carefully and helping guide some decisions as opposed to asking no questions and letting things just slip right past with a yes or a no. I mean, there's some investigation issues with, frankly, I'm concerned how invested some of the city council might be in the role. I understand it's, I mean, for $200 a month, I'm not sure what we're getting out of a city councilman. I mean, you've got to be a volunteer. You have to have a passion for it. But I'll finish with just saying, I'm not sure all 14 of us are a good choice for the city. So I would hope everybody watching and everybody in a position to meet the candidates, ask some tough questions. Don't be scared. If you have a concern, fire a question away, because I've met all of us, and I think the list is like 8 people, not 14. So don't be scared to ask some tough questions of us, and that's it.
Thank you very much. Bill, you just kind of skipped over a couple of guys. Let's go back around. The question we've been asking the rest of them is, who are you? And just so that our audience knows who you are. What's your background?
You're talking to me. All right? I'm Ray Goodall.
And we want to have you tell us who you are and specifically why you want to be on the city council. So Ray Goodall, we'll start with you.
Okay. Hold the mic around a little bit. I'm Ray Goodall, and like him, I've done a lot of construction work. I've never met a company or worked with a company from Bechtel, Global, you name them, I've been there. And I've never met anybody I didn't like on the job, but I've seen some awful stupid things pulled and things you'd never believe. And there's some things here in the city, like he says, and these close scrutiny. I'm not going to mention any names, but whittling a plug and driving it in a water line went out long time ago. But we got pipe in the ground just exactly like that. And we're drinking water from it. But getting back to myself, I've seen some pretty good boners pulled too. I was working for Caltrans, California, putting in an overhead bypass. The district advisor called me and asked me to leave my job, go over and see what the hell the problem was with the overpass. I went over, this thing was 85 feet in the air. I walked it first, just walked around the edge. It wasn't completed. We had 4 stanchions in the air that we had poured with concrete, and the deck was on it. We had 85 feet of rebar steel hanging out over I-5, cars traveling under it. And I thought, you know, the road feels funny, but what is causing that? Well, this thing was going up and making a turn to the left coming down to get you off of I-5. I went back to my truck and I had a drink of water and I sat there and I looked. Damn, it looks good. Why in the hell do I feel funny walking on it? So I had a baseball in the toolbox of my truck. I went and got the baseball, walked back. I got about halfway over the curve. I just laid the ball down on the floor, on the asphalt. And it took off away from center of gravity. I thought, wow. Can you imagine driving around that at 65 miles an hour and center of gravity is pulling you and you're on a downhill side? So I called the district. He said, you're wrong, Ray. They'd never do that. I said, come out and take a look. I'll stick around. And I did. About 5:30, here he come up there. And we walked up together. I says, lay that ball down there. He says, what do you want me to roll it around? I said, no, just lay it down there. Just set it on the surface. He set it there, and that ball just took off. Oh my God, he says, what are we going to do now? We've got over a mile of overpass coming off this I-5, going up in the air, coming around, coming back down, and dropping them off on another avenue. I says, I don't know. I think it's time to take the eraser to the blackboard and do some changes. So we did, but it put the contractor 6 months behind on his schedule, which wasn't very good either. Another thing was that I had to contend with, California's got an awful lot of, it's got its share of rattlesnakes, okay? And the guys was always putting a rattlesnake in a bucket, setting it in the back of my truck. And I'd drive it out in the country and turn it loose. One night, I started home, and I looked down in the floorboard of my truck, and there was a rattlesnake, and he was curled, pretty good size one. I looked at that thing, and there was no way I was going to get my boot up over that clutch housing and get on top of him before he struck me. So I just kept watching him, pulled off the side of the road, opened the door, stepped out, went around on the other side, opened the door, got the snake, had a gunny sack. I sacked the snake up, put him in the back. Next day, I took it out to the zoo, asked them what to do with it. And they said, well, it's been somebody's pet, Ray. It has no fangs. What? I'm not going to be the one that checks that snake for that. So grab ass on a job is another thing that it has its place, but it should be appropriate. And I could have had a heart attack pretty easy. I didn't know if that damn truck would go as fast as I wanted to travel or not. I can't.
Well, Ray, with all those experiences, why in the world would you want to be on the city council and have to deal with people like that?
Can you hold that mic back a little bit? Go ahead.
So why would you like to be on the city council with people like that?
Well, I want a different occupation. I want to get it where we can get along, and I'd like to work with the county commissioners too. I'd like to expand myself a little bit. I worked at Pendleton, and I can tell this guy over here, he's been around a little bit. But I don't know. It's difficult. I had control of the money too, paying different phases of work. And like he says, it can get away from you if you're not careful. When you get up above millions of dollars, and like a lot of my projects was 24 billion and above. But when you're dealing with figures like that, like this engineer said, it isn't the letters you gotta watch, it's where that decimal point falls. And he was speaking from experience. You can get in a lot of trouble messing with money. And I think our city has learned a pretty good lesson about that right now. But like out here on our highway, I watched them come in and put down the concrete over pipes that if we could have a underground leak and it's going to shut some businesses down because that old pipe's been there since the 50s. Nobody thought about the underground. Anytime you're working above pipe, get to the bottom and work up. See what you got down there. See if it's going to last as long as the surface on top of it is.
So you think you'd be interested in at least checking over how our city utilities are run anyway?
Well, there's problems there also, and I think everybody knows that. All we need to do is get our heads together and work as a team, and we can solve them. There's nothing out there that can't be solved.
Okay, let's go on to Bill.
Good evening. I'm glad for this opportunity to let you know who I am. I'm Bill Banks. I've lived in the city of Cortez for 44 years. Was married to my wife for 41 years. May 27th of this year, she'll have passed away 2 years ago. We raised 2 children. I have 4 grandchildren. I love the city of Cortez. I haven't been really pleased with some of the decisions that have been made on city council recently. I don't think they were popular decisions. I think they went against the will of the constituency of Cortez. The mediums were one, and the changes to the land use regulations were another. I've worked in the energy industry for 44 years. 24 of those years was in a supervisory position. At one time, I had 3 rigs, and the auxiliary equipment that went with them probably totaled around $3 million worth of stuff, and I had 12 men that I was responsible for. I remember going into a manager's office one time and asking for something for one of the rigs, and he looked up from his desk and he says, "Bill, do you want it or do you need it?" And I've always remembered that. There's a difference between wants and needs. And when we have the money for wants, that's one thing, but the needs need to be taken care of first. We need to have a good rainy day fund. We need to remember that we're spending other people's money. Yeah, I'm a fiscal conservative. I don't believe in wasting money. I try to treat other people's money the same way I would spend my own. I've been on my local church board for the last 5 years and worked on budgets for the church. I know that that's a small percentage of what takes place in the city of Cortez, but it's the same formula. It's money in and money out, and we need to be responsible for that. And yeah.
So why do you want to be on the city council?
Because I want to try to direct this city a little bit better fiscally in the spending of its money, and yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you all for that. As I mentioned, the 2 new ones earlier, we're going to have more of a discussion rather than just question and answer. So we have some things we want to certainly get the direction going. And whoever would like to respond, we kind of keep short responses so we can kind of keep it moving. But we can interchange back and forth, and if I have a different opinion about what the answer is, and discuss a little bit, and then we'll move on to more stuff. But to start off with, we're talking about the city council. The city, you have your city manager, and you have the city staff, and the different departments and all their staff, which they're the workers and doing everything. What do you see the legal role of the city council? What is the responsibility and role of the city council that you would be on?
Can I take this one? This question honestly is right in my wheelhouse. I've had the pleasure of going through leadership training on the policy governance. I sit on the board of directors for the Colorado State Association of Realtors. And understanding policy governance, which this is, it's just law governance versus having a policy for a business, is understanding our roles. And that to me is huge. And I think as I've watched in the past, and I apologize to Sue, but I think sometimes the bus was driving it, well, excuse me, the cart was driving the horses. The city council is the horse. They are employed by the people. And in governance, especially our governance, we have 3 employees. The most vital employee is our city manager. Our job is stakeholders, or general manager, if you will, to that one employee. That one employee then manages all of the other ones. And it's important to remember that role, that he is the guy. And he's the guy that hires everybody else. That is governance. You know, he is, I mean, if you check our charter, it even repeats that. You know, he is in charge of hiring. They may come to us and say, but those are his employees. They're not our employees. You know, our 3 employees, help me if I'm wrong, we've got the city manager, the attorney, and right, those are our 3 that we have to govern, okay? And they have their employees. And their employees report to him, he reports to us. And so I think that we've got to hold the city manager's feet to the fire. You know, we can't discipline his employees. We can go to him and say, listen, here's the issue. And it is just like with any other board. That is the same way they're set up. You can go to your paid employee, but you really aren't supposed to go directly to that employee. You know, let the general manager or the city manager or whatever organization do their job. That is their job. And our job is to listen to the people, help develop those policies, and help govern that one individual that runs the entities.
Any disagreements there?
I actually pretty much agree with Mr. Witt, other than not other than, but we need to include the fact that we need to be more of a role for the people outside of what I've seen. The representation that we have for what we have now, truly I don't think represents people, again, like me or certain other people. The role that we need to do is truly listen. I've actually been told stories and different things about how other council members actually went and got information, and it was just completely overpassed. I've heard other things about how things were just done improperly, like Mr. Banks said about the medians. Truly, we need to go back to listening that we are a small community, we're a small town. We have lots of people like myself who live here and are younger and want to live here and can see this town going into a direction that I don't want to see it going into, just because I fiscally can't live in a town that has restriction and things like that. So truly, truly, I think we need to go back to the grassroots of listening to people, going door to door even, actually like stepping out of the comfort zone of the city building and go out. And then even step out of the comfort of your boards and groups and committees. And I truly believe that there are a lot of people that are on boards and groups and committees that have a great advantage to push those things, but man, we need to step out and include everything. We were told the other day that there's so much involved in this. I've got 35 different things, from police, fire, schools, roads. Nobody, I'm like sitting here going, why are nobody talking about these things? There's so many things, and everyone needs to be more open to everything, I feel like, in our city council.
Yeah, I believe that we should listen to our constituency and not try to impose our will on decisions, but to relay their will in our decision-making process.
I totally agree with that. I think that in the past we've had a little bit too much of other people expecting us to bow down to what they wanted, and I think that you know, it's time, if we want to keep this community the community that it is, we're going to have to band together and work as a team. You know, these split votes 4 and 3 against, which happened numerous times in the last 2 years. You know, I really feel that had we been able to talk and people would have had a little more of an open mind, we could have worked things out and they would have worked out better. So you're right as far as who is, you know, in charge of the people under the city manager. We do give him some information, some, you know, he hasn't been here that long. We hired him since I've been in the council. And, you know, we've had to explain to him who different people are and what their pasts are and, you know, what we would recommend them for, what they're, you know, what they're good at. And so, you know, council really does take an active part in who's getting hired for what departments. The city manager made the decision on the new director for finances, and thank you. And that was his completely his decision, and we'll see how it goes, you know. But I think, you know, if we all put our heads together and we talk it out instead of just getting stubborn and planting our feet. You know, I had a mule that used to plant its feet all the time when I was a kid. By golly, you know, you just can't do it. You got to sit down and talk it out. Communication.
But we were told that there's lots of no's to plow through. I believe the other day at our meeting, we were told you got to plow through the no's to keep going forward. And I kind of thought that was not a really good way to, like, to come together to actually be a community.
Mm-hmm.
Not just plowing through the no's doesn't seem like a very good fit for, like I said, our community.
I agree.
Well, and I'd like to agree with what Rafe said. I think the best way we can represent our community is to be involved in our community as much as we can in every aspect, because we all love this community and we all want to be here for it. And we're hired by the constituents, you know, and I think the voters spoke before and they will again on who they think will best represent our community.
And thank God for them.
Yeah.
Tiffany?
I would like to say that I am fully supportive of the new city manager. I think from what I've seen in my limited experience, he came in to a situation or several situations, and I think he's done a great job. I really am supportive of the job he's done. I know that you know, as things go along with time, lots of things tend to get swept under the rug, and it keeps on getting swept and swept until somebody comes into a position and it doesn't resemble anything like the checks, the balances, everything that position is supposed to be. And I think that as far as remedying the situation that's been going on with accounting, I think has been handled very well. And I think it would continue to be handled very well. I think that my job as a part of being of service is I'm sort of the middle person. I can't represent any specific idea or anything. Like, I worked in code enforcement for a brief time at the city of Cortez. And I think at one time in my life I said, wouldn't that be awful to have to do that for a job? And I'm pretty sure I meant it when I said it. But I learned so much in that position as far as being of service, as far as being able to do things to help where law enforcement can't do anything. But due to the city ordinances, this is something that can be, but I've never looked at it as my place or my job. It's just to put myself on that service plane. And so to do that, for me, I'm a middle person. I represent the people, and they pay all of the taxes. They make the city run, but, you know, I have a responsibility to the city as well. to learn about how the governing is meant to be, so that I'm a middle person, not on one side or another without facts or anything like that. That's all.
Just to kind of follow up a little bit, along that same line, as elected officials, and these are elected officials in the state of Colorado, elected officials all take a oath of office. Are you aware of what the oath of office may say for this oath of office that you'll sign?
I don't know what this here would indicate. I know what police is. I was for a short time a deputy sheriff under Gleisner. Short time was about 3.5 months, and I got a call from an engineering firm in San Diego to go out and take a test and be interviewed. 14 years later, I was still in California, and I've still got the uniform I wore and the badge hanging in my closet from Montezuma County. I'm very proud of this county, but I'm like her. I think for a city this size and everything, a safety engineer hired by the city, probably it might be too early for that, because they're a high-paid individual, but their responsibilities are very high. As I drive these streets, I see raised sidewalks. I see sidewalks in place that wouldn't accommodate a full-size wheelchair that's cracked and raised and dropped. But these are things that we can work out and accomplish later.
Well, as far as an oath of office, when you took an oath of office for the sheriff, what oath did you sign? What did it say?
It was just to familiarize yourself with certain stops, do's and don'ts, and always be respectful of the one that you're stopping. He wasn't one like, if you want to compare, like Spruill was. Spruill was a hard nut to crack, or he had his own way of doing things. If a guy stuck his legs under the car and said, "I'm not getting up," he got up. The officer just picked him up and skinned his shins all the way down to his shoes, and that was it.
Well, the oath of office that you'll be signing is the same as the oath of office that the county commissioners sign. It's very simple.
Can I say something?
Yes, Sue, you have a...
To abide by the constitutional rights of the people. And that's the oath that I took.
Yeah.
That's right. It's the same oath. Anybody in elected office will be to protect the Constitution of the state of Colorado, the state of the United States Constitution, and the laws of Colorado. That's just three little things, very simple. But the question again comes down, what does that mean when it says protecting the Constitution of the state of Colorado and the Constitution of the United States? It starts off with, as entering into the discussion, you're talking about, very simply, the Constitution, and we would look at, you start off with the first 10 amendments, which is talking about the rights of the people, all the rights that are inherent in the Constitution. Looks like you've got something to say, Rachel.
I do, yeah. So I'd say, yes, our oath is to uphold the Constitution, and also as a home rule city, what that means is that we are self-governing. We make our rules, we make our policies, and we amend our rules. We oversee the people, not the state.
If I could take it back, if no one minds, to the role of us as city council members. We're really asking the city of Cortez to put their faith in us to become the experts and the decision makers on things that come before the city. If you don't have the intellect, the experience, or the wherewithal to ask the right questions, there's really only two things we can do as city council people. We can say yes to everything that comes by, or we can just say no to everything. And if you're not asking questions, you're taking recommendations and you're either saying yes or no. And if you're not using your mind, this is emotion. And I think the city of Cortez deserves better than our emotions when we're making decisions for what should happen. And I think there's a lot of video to go back on to see some bad examples of how our city council people in those positions have behaved. And I mean, I've watched a month go by without a substantive question. It sounds kind of like this, so you don't have to spend 80 hours watching this. It sounds like, okay, so the city manager has put this in front of us. What are we going to do? What's the question? Oh, well, the city manager suggests this, or the planning and zoning suggests this. It's the recommendation of staff. Silence.
Part of the reason that you're
And then, just one sec. And then it either gets voted up or down. And you don't, there's an opportunity to ask questions and to inform yourself. And I don't see that being done a lot. And I think it's a missed opportunity to become more informed. And that can be asked of the city manager or of council or what have you. So I just, it's really just what we're going to do with our time and what you could trust us to do if elected to do with our time. I'm sorry, Sue, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know, I think you're a little misinformed there because by the time we get into council, we've already gone through a workshop and we've already gone through all of those, and we've done the discussion on all of the things on the agenda. So by the time we go in there, we know how we're going to vote most of it, and that's why you're seeing that. You know. Sure. I'm sorry, I get to gawking off. We discuss the problems on all of those situations before we go into council. So therefore, when we get into council, we know already, and the questions have already been asked. So yeah, we can slide them through right away, as long as there's no objection to them.
But you've even actually said that there have been lots of split decisions.
Oh, yes.
And I'm even with Justin on this. I wonder why none of those split decisions were actually on YouTube for the people like us to see instead of in the workshops. I'm just, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that it's a good thing to, you know, put that out there, but if you guys have these things in workshops, I mean, I've watched other city council meetings like Durango, Farmington, all this stuff. I've heard them on their agendas ask the people in front of other people so that information can get out there and it's not just in the workshop. So I mean, I see where Justin's coming from, and I 100% see where you're coming from, but you know, that's kind of I think what he's meaning too, you know.
Yeah, I understand, and you know, I agree with that. But I do want you guys to understand that before we go into a council meeting, there is that period of time in the workshop that we do try and solve the problems. Some of the problems are not solvable with the 7 people. So.
I know that she's being truthful here right now because I went to a few city council meetings, just sat in the audience and watched people get on the mic and ask permission to do certain things. And I was amazed one evening when I was sitting there and somebody had come up with a new way of cleaning this marijuana stuff, and that's clear out of my realm. I don't understand, but she had a good way, a new way, and she'd been schooled in cleaning in order to process it for the public. And I was set back when I think it was the mayor said, I vote yes or something, and then it was just yes, 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 down the line. And I thought, wow, something like this, and there wasn't what if asked one time. Seems strange, you know? What if something broke down or something went awry and it wouldn't work? But all the council members voted yes. So after the council, I went and asked Orly, why? Why was it just I? Didn't take a minute for that to get passed and accepted. He says, Ray, we sat in the workshop. You're sitting out here. You ought to come in that workshop and sit. That's where you find out why we know I. He said, we discuss it quite well, and we cover the bases. So I'm with her there. I think that's been done. That's been accomplished.
Jason, you had to.
No, I was just going to say, as it's part of the, the mayor's trying to do her very best in trying to follow Robert's Rules of Order. And there's certain guidelines that are set up in parliamentary government, which this is, on that which you can follow. That's why the workshops are so very important. Not to take away from any other discussions, but that is where 99% of your work will be done, is discussing, debating back and forth. Because as you follow that, there's protocol. A motion is made, the motion is first and seconded, and then debate happens. That's the Robert Rules of Order. And then there's not a lot of debate in there, because hopefully you've done your homework. You know if there's something else that a citizen has brought up in there, and that's where we need the citizens' participation, that's where then it is discussed. Okay, this was brought up, my mind, but hopefully we've done our due diligence. We know where we're at. We've sat and we've talked with the council in these workshops, utilized the time that we've been given to do it. And hopefully, as a group, if we haven't made that cohesive decision, you can table motions. You can say, hey, listen, I don't think that we've talked enough about this. We know it's on the vote, but hey, listen, we need to discuss more. We need more information. Let's table this. But using those rules that are set up there to make it effective. And that's where you can be effective in those meetings, because those rules are set, because you've done all the dirty work, you've gotten down, you've discovered it, and you made motions of discovery and things like that, all outside, so you can be there. But again, understanding the Robert Rules of Order is kind of important in the parliamentary system, and knowing that. And that's where we have to give them kind of a break, because that's what they're following. All the dirt is done elsewhere. If it's brought up in the council and there's new evidence, then there's, like it says, the motion, the first and the second, and then the discussion, if new evidence has come up to make that discussion. I don't know if that helps or not.
Yeah. Just going back a little bit to your oath of office, where it protects the operate under the Constitution of the state of Colorado and the Constitution of the United States. Been a lot of recent people upset over the Second Amendment and the Fourth Amendment in regarding to the red flag bill. What would this, your council, where would you be at to say, my job is to protect the Constitution within the city, overseeing the city? Would I direct our police chief, who is not an elected officer, the council is, would you direct the police chief to stand down and say, no, we're not going to violate the Second Amendment and Fourth Amendment of our residents of our city?
I support the Second Amendment 100%. I believe that anybody and everybody who, should have the right to have the choice to carry a gun. And actually, I do believe that if our sheriff or city wanted to stand up and say, we are not going to follow this law, I'm 100% behind them with that.
I'm 100% behind them, but we have to take into consideration also the legal end of it, the aspect of whether or not we're going to end up in a lawsuit over somebody not liking that decision and us pushing it on our police chief. If our police chief wanted to make that decision, I would be 100% behind him. But as far as pushing him to do it, no, it would be up to him, because he's the one that's going to be liable for whatever decision. He's the one that they're going to bring to court, and you know.
Speaking.
Really, how do I want to say this? You're trained as a police officer. The highest ranking law officer we have is our sheriff. The only one that can arrest him is our coroner. I don't want to say I wish the sheriff would pass that law. I'm kind of getting away from it, but if he did, I'd be full backing him up. That's where I stand with Amendment 2.
I spent 29 years on the police department. 21 of that as a supervisor, but I was a road officer and a road sergeant. During that period of time, I always carried a gun. The gun is not the problem. It's the person behind the gun. I believe in guns, and I would have a very hard time trying to take anybody's guns. And I'm sorry, folks, it'd be a cold day in hell before they'll get my guns voluntarily. So if the chief didn't want to go picking up guns, I'd say that's probably a wise decision, even though the law says differently, because I know a lot of people are going to come out fighting with those guns.
Well, let's move on to another one. This is an interesting one. Do you think the city should have the power of eminent domain?
The power to what?
To have eminent domain. In other words, take over private property for the best interest of the city, so supposedly. You want to?
No, because I believe that law has been misused in a lot of places throughout the land. Property was originally supposed to be, if property was supposed to be for the general good of the, but I mean it's been used for private industry, and yeah, I think it's just been misused in places. So I would be very hesitant to condemn anything through eminent domain. That's private property is sanctified as far as I'm concerned. That's if we don't have private property, we're not free. We don't have liberty. And private property is where it all begins.
I think that there may be only very few extreme cases where that's an understandable approach to acquiring property.
What might be an extreme case? What do you think?
I can't think of any yet, so.
Pretty extreme, aren't they? Okay, this one here, see how we do. The city of Cortez has plus or minus 8,000 residents. Now, earlier you were talking about coming out and meeting the people, and what do the people want, and what's their needs, and how do we deal with the people? Okay, you got 8,000 people, and that usually represents about 8,000 opinions of what they want and what they don't want. How do you appease and please 8,000 residents?
Sorry. I think outreach is extremely important, and we need to recognize that our constituents may be too busy with jobs and families and their responsibilities. So the city needs to take an outreach approach where they make it as accommodating as possible to get as many people involved, to hear as many voices. And I think that the city could do better with that.
Along with that, getting those voices, you're going to see a majority rule. You know, again, it states our purpose in here is to assure that the minority is protecting while facilitating the will of the majority. You're doing that by listening to everybody. You're going out there and you're getting everybody's thoughts and processes. So I promise you there's not going to be 8,000 different views. There's going to be some commonality in there. And that commonality will show as either majority or minority. But it is our job to wade through all that and find that. The only way we can do that is, like Ms. Medina said, is getting out there to the people, getting to what they say, collecting that information. None better than our forms on the land use code. Wow, that was great. You know, there was a lot of extremes on either side, but there was a huge majority in the middle. And that's where our job is to find that. We have to weed through that, but we can't do that without information. We can't do that without getting out there and being with the people and among the people and knowing, because we are those people. You know, their voice is our voice. We all want a greater community. But I think, to answer your question directly, I think it'll weed itself out. There's enough people out there and there's enough voices that we will see. We'll see the extreme on either side, and we'll see the majority vote, you know, ring through, because we'll see that commonality. You know, we all want a great city, and I think talking to enough people, we'll see that. In my
jump
opinion.
in on that a little bit. You talked about the majority.
Mm-hmm.
Your oath of office says nothing about the majority. The city code says nothing about the majority. The Constitution of the state of Colorado says nothing about the majority. What it says is the Constitution and the laws of the state. So the majority is immaterial.
No, you misquoted me. I said facilitating the majority. Facilitating is listening to. We still have an oath to protect
Correct.
the best interest.
Because
I did not say, I said you
I've been
misquoted
sitting
me.
here trying to pretend to be part of this public back here. I have yet to hear an answer to the question, what do you know about the oath of office, and how do you intend to make your decisions based on your understanding of the oath of office? None of you have answered that question.
Has anybody been here given the oath of the office of Cortez? You're asking us a question that we can't answer because we haven't seen it. If you give it to us, we could answer that. But sir, we have not seen it in front of us. So how can we answer something that we have not seen? I hate to be rude, but we ask the question that we can't answer because we don't see the oath that Cortez has to take in front of us. Sorry, I hate to get upset, but that's a pretty harsh question to ask us when we don't know.
I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state of Colorado, and the laws of the state of Colorado. Now that's paraphrased, but that's a direct quote portion. There is a conflict, and Dexter brought it up with the police chief thing. The red flag law is clearly unconstitutional. Yet you're going to take an oath to uphold the law of the state of Colorado. How are you going to handle that conflict and still remain faithful to the oath of office? Because you know, we can talk about individual issues, the land use code or the potholes or whatever. What we as the public need to know is, how do you understand the Constitution and the laws that you're going to take an oath to? That means you have to know what they say. And that's how the public is going to try to figure out. If you understand this, maybe your decision on particular issue will fall in line. So that's why we ask that question. It's so that we can try to determine how you think in that issue.
So with the Constitution of Colorado and the United States for that matter, there are guidelines for us to pass laws by. On one hand, you have the Second Amendment, which the Constitution says we can carry, we can all keep and bear arms. Then we have a law that was passed in Colorado, these red flag laws. Well, a constitutional law supersedes a law that's been passed. So upholding that, whatever the Constitution says about a particular issue, supersedes what is passed through legislature and signed into law by a governor.
I would agree with that, I personally don't support any type of gun control whatsoever, and it's a sort of a downhill slope. And I agree that for myself to uphold my oath of office, I would not support the red flag bill. I would not in any way support it because I don't support gun control in any way, shape, or form. That's all.
Truly, I think we just need to kind of all step up now and kind of become the new patriots of our generation or our community, because we have a divide and we have conflicting laws. We need to stand up how we have been taught throughout our history, to stand up and actually stand for what you believe in and how you believe in them. And again, we broke laws back in the day, wanting to come here through England. So we truly, truly need to just stand up and be American constitutionalists and patriots again to our country, from freedom of speech to gun laws, just everything in the Constitution. Again, just a new era, I guess, of trying to learn or be beneficial. We're gonna possibly step on somebody's toes or break a law because we have so many laws being written in that we gotta stand up and make a stand and stick with that stand. Truly, honestly, again, the Constitution is a good thing that I have always went for. And there is truly a lot of watered down nowadays. So that's just where I stand on that.
Just following up a little bit on that, I think what Bud was saying, it carries far more than just the Second Amendment. In fact, it covers over the areas which I asked about, whether it's eminent domain, private property rights, all aspects of the Constitution. They're very, very few and well defined. And a lot of our laws or regulations that we tend to pass becoming in conflict with that very basic rights of our liberty and our private ownership and the way we conduct our lives, become very easy to become in conflict because it makes sense and it's a good idea and for a few of us, which is kind of why I asked the question about pleasing 8,000 people. It's impossible. You can't, because somebody's going to be unhappy. And so the whole aspect is we go back to the very few things that we have agreed upon 250 years ago that we're supposed to be complying with. If those few things and the rest of it comes down to personal responsibility to take care of myself and not depend on the city council or anybody else to take care of me. If we stick with just the constitutional principles, then it's encouraging to hear what you guys are saying, because like Bud says, we're the public out here that's looking to who's going to be our representatives. We're a representative government, not a democracy of mass people fighting each other. We're for the vote. You are our representatives on the council to watch out and protect our rights, property ownership, our liberty, our Second Amendment, what have you. All these rights is what our representative, as you govern, that's where we're at. With that in line, it's a good question of what do you think was wrong with the proposal for the land use code in the city? What went wrong with the land use proposal?
Well, what I see, too much of it went against private ownership. Is that piece of property truly yours, or to do with what you want, or is it not? You know.
It's kind of like, hey, which would you pick if you had to pick choice between freedom and liberty? What are you going to say? Where do you come from? You know the Pledge of Allegiance speaks of liberty. Read the Constitution, it speaks of freedom, ownership, life. So it's one of half a dozen of one and something else, you know. I was asked that question one time, and I sat and listened an hour and a half right over here at Walmart, wherever the hell it's at. But back when I was a kid, I'd go out with little sacks and I'd pick up chips of broken pottery out here. We'd sack it up. I was a Cub Scout. This is 1941. We'd put in a little sack. We sold it for 25 cents on the street, and it went to help the needy, the people who was in a war then. And we did that. Well, my granddaughter from Nebraska came down. She wanted to go out and hop around in the sagebrush and walk through the pine trees. So I took her out here at Areola, and we went west out there in the county. I walked across the cattle guard, and I noticed on the cattle guard it said public lands. And hey, come on, we're going to get us some pottery. So we walked out there, and coming back, I noticed a little sign on the bottom said private property, no trespassing. So I come on in town, went down here at Walmart, bought some ammunition. Coming up out of Walmart by the PLM's over there and some of the buildings there, I walked over there and I said, hey, I was out there. I had a Polaroid camera with me. So I took a picture of both the signs, walked in there, and I asked him, I said, hey, how can land out there be public property and yet a no trespassing sign down below by BLM? He says, get that chair over there and drag it up in front of my desk. I'll explain it to you. An hour and a half later, I was still being explained to by that guy. What an experience. I thought, boy, Montezuma's changed. It's changed a lot. But that's just an example. But freedom and liberty goes hand in hand. I can't see how you can be free if somebody else is going to control what you've worked hard to purchase and pay for. You know? And yet, this is the freest country, and I've been all over the Mediterranean, North Atlantic, and down in the Caribbean. I've been all over. There's no better place to live than here.
Now, just for your information, whoever ends up on the, and I hope at least 5 of this group ends up in there on the council, but what we've heard from the rest of our public is what, to answer my question of what kind of went wrong with the land use code was what was mentioned. It became very apparent and kind of crossed the line, I guess you might say. In people's minds, they became aware that it violated their personal property rights and violated their liberty, and so that touched them off. And it was just a totally violation of their rights. And whether it was a good idea, a lot of it was not the point. It crossed over. That's what it was. Any other comments?
Yes, actually, I do. I mean, as you all, most of you know, I'm part of the Realtor Party, and its goal is to protect personal property and that. And so that's where I came in on that portion of it, is what are we doing to protect the individual and their properties that they have. One of the things that I'm kind of ashamed of as us citizens is a lot of that stuff that was in the second code was cut and pasted into the other code. So were we asleep at the wheel as citizens? You know, I'm glad that we're on the bus now and we can make a change, but you know, it was a wake-up call for us, because again, it was what we have now was written in there, you know, several years ago. The question is what do we do with it now? Because it's still there. It may not be as egregious as some of the fines that were in there, but it's still there. So the issues of the oversight and the variations are still there. You can't build, you know, right now if your house burns down in downtown Cortez, or, you know, down in the city, your house is on a variance because it's not even 25 feet or 20 feet, not only the 25, burns down, and without a variance, you can't rebuild that house. And so you have to go to the city, and that hasn't changed, just the distance has changed. So you still have to go back to the city and say, listen, please give me a variance so I can rebuild this house. There lies the problem, is the transparency and the responsibility and understanding what would constitute a variance, what wouldn't constitute a variance. It was just too vague, which means if that was vague, so is our old code. So where do we go now? Where do we go to protect those individuals? Protect protect Sue, whose house burns down. She may not have the insurance or the money to rebuild it. Her note is called due. But she's not a friend of the council, but I am. You know, or the P&Z, so I am. I'm buddies with them. So I would have the same thing, and my house would burn down, and oh yeah, we'll give you the variance. There's no equality there. And so we need to change that. We need to address that. There's a lot of parts to that elephant to eat, but that's just one of the many, and that's where I started to look at it and go, who has the control? Where was the, you know, there isn't any. There's no transparency. There's no consistency. It's not predictable and it's not clear. And if it's a boilerplate of the old one's not predictable and clear. So, you know, it's our job to go and listen to the people, find it, and help develop that.
I've had some experience with the scenario of the house burning down with my insurance job, and it was an older house that was remodeled, an old farmhouse. There was no coverage on it for the fact that it was built in 1930, and part of it was destroyed by a fire, so their insurance is no way capable of paying to restore it according to the old building codes, the materials, making it whole again. So there's a lot in what you just said too about the size of a lot if a home was built before the current land use code came into place. And I think that when variances are asked for, I'm not sure how that works, you know, because I know likely sometimes they're granted and sometimes they're not. Sometimes people really set out there to build knowing that they're not doing it correctly, and then boom, it's built, and what are you going to do, make them tear it down or move it, you know? So it's kind of interesting.
It's one of those things where this is a very good explanation, a very good opportunity, because as you say, where do we go now? And most everybody I hear out here, the old existing code, it needs to be changed because whether they were asleep at the wheel or just weren't aware at the time, things just happen. That doesn't make them right or wrong. They're there. So now you can go back as you look at it. There's there to go back to the very basics of what we were just discussing. Our personal property rights and our liberty are very foundational. And as we look at any regulation, any law, the question should be asked, does it comply with our personal property rights? Does it comply with our liberty of an individual? Not the whole town, but the individual. It's the people as individuals. So we make a new regulation. Should your grass be less than 6 inches tall in your lawn? Does that comply with your liberty?
I've gotten that ticket. Sorry.
Yeah, well, you know then, any of these regulations, where do they actually conflict with individuals' property rights? Are they in conflict with the health, the safety, and the economic welfare of the community, your neighbor? Does your grass that's 8 inches tall, does it damage your neighbor? No. We have to look at these things. So as we review these things, we need to look at the very basics of the health, the safety, and the economic welfare of the people. That's the reason why we have sewer pipes, because it's the health of your neighbor and the safety, not your grass or whether or not your windows colored or not. Those have nothing to do with health and safety of the people. That's where they come from. We're going to run out of time here. Another one of interest is.
Okay, I just want to clarify. So, obviously the city land use code is not perfect, and it needs a lot of work. But there is a system for people who want to do things that don't fit within the land use code. So currently, the city has a board of adjustments and appeals, and that's where these variances come across, and appeals to ordinance or fines and tickets. And I've had the privilege of sitting on that board before and voting yes to allow these variances, because I think there was an undue burden and that the property owners had a right to do what they wanted. But unfortunately, that board has never been full. So when I was on that board, it was 4 people, and the vote was 2-2, which means that it failed regardless. So that is one avenue that others can get involved with what the land use code sits right now, and help protect private property rights, is being involved and being on that board or going to those meetings and standing up for private property.
Very good. I was going to ask, what about economic growth? What role does the city play? What can the city do about economic growth in the area? Do we even want it?
Make it happen.
I think what we need to do is try to keep tax rates as low as possible, keep regulations as few as we can, and that provides good atmosphere for business to come in. They look for places where they don't have as high a tax rate. And I know the city needs revenue, but when you get more business in, you make that revenue off of volume of more businesses than you do necessarily a higher tax rate that you may have fewer businesses because they don't want to open up a business here because the tax rate's too high. And the same way with regulation. When there's onerous regulations that people have to spend a lot of money on to get into business, they're not going to start a business here. They're going to start it somewhere else. So those are the things that we can try to do, as far as I can see it.
I think I covered some of that when I was first speaking, that we really need to try and encourage businesses to open here. And like I said, as far as jobs and that, get them to give us some preference, points for the Cortez people so that we can get added income coming into the Cortez area. The taxes, all taxes are going to do is just, I think, actually going to run more people out, because eventually we have the taxes so high, they can't afford to keep up with those taxes. So they're going to have to move. And like I said, I watched it, I saw it firsthand, Archuleta County, my mom and dad, their place. If they wouldn't have gotten the elderly discount on their taxes, I don't think my mom and dad would have been able to keep their place. So, you know, we can't keep taxing, trying to get higher wages for people and get new people in. We have to come up with more constructive ways by gaining more employment, getting new businesses started, encouraging them, even if the city has to give some breaks to get them in. But I really, truly do believe that we do need to have some kind of a commitment with them to use Cortez people as much as possible so that we can keep our dollars here in Cortez.
I agree with Mr. Banks and Ms. Councilwoman Betts. I would just throw something else out there that has been coming up with me on Mesa Verde country, the tourism board, and that is definitely, I'm not a fan of more or new taxes, but we have a lodger's tax, and that is for everybody who stays in Cortez. They pay an additional tax that typically, though not completely, citizens aren't burdened with. It's visitors to the area. We have the smallest lodger's tax, one of the smallest available, and one of the things I'm a huge proponent of is increasing that lodger's tax, where our community technically won't see it. Now, if you have a company and you're bringing business into town and you're putting employees up in hotels, you'll see a small increase. But one of the things that lodger's tax, and this might be and this may be something we disagree with, or something I could, Mr. Banks and Councilwoman Betts might be interested in getting on board of, and that is that money is spent to try and attract people to our area, to encourage people to visit here, possibly to win them over, and possibly get them to move their families here, to help develop tourism, to help support the cultural center, to help support all kinds of different stuff. And Kelly does an incredible job, in my opinion, trying to bring visitors to the area. And that might be an incident or an instance we can look at where increasing the tax wouldn't be so much a burden on our populace and actually be a good thing. And that I would just throw that out there for consideration.
And I do believe I'm on the same
Yeah.
committee.
This kind of falls back to our land use code a little bit. Had the opportunity to go to our nation's or our state's capital and talk about economic growth just 4 days ago. And they brought in an individual company that what they do is their job is to bring industry into the Colorado, Denver area. You know, they've done a good enough job where Boulder's getting Google and Colorado Springs is getting Amazon. They're bringing those companies in. Part of the reason that they did that is they did a We Love Colorado campaign. They did it by showing the best of what Colorado had to offer. We have some smart people here. Businesses want smart people to work for them. You know, we need to show the best of what we have. We have great recreation here. Companies now that are starting are different than companies were before. Before was cheap taxes, cheap land, lots of profit. That's not what their people are saying now. And I agree with Mr. Banks, I'm not saying that, but the evolution has happened with these businesses that they want someplace to be to where their people have a quality of life. They want places to be that they can pull a good, educated person to work for them, that they can make a profit that way. But again, the quality of life and the stableness of the city is important. And we don't need to be putting tons of restrictions on them to, well, you can't have a metal building, it only has to be stucco. We're hurting for businesses. We don't want to hurt them more by saying, here's all these hoops that you jump through in order to be here. We need to make it as accommodating as possible. The other thing that we have to do is we have to stay consistent. Because not only are we going to affect our current business owners, but let's say that I offer Rafe's company, you know, a kickback on his taxes to come in and bring his people in. But I cannot not offer the same thing to Rachel, who owns a business right now. We have to be consistent because we need her to stay, but we want Rafe to come in. And the worst thing that can happen is giving one company, a major company, a sweet deal to move in here and not making sure that you take care of everybody else that's local. Because that's going to get people going, hey, if you're not going to take care of me in the long run, why do I need to be here? There's a lot of aspects to growing that economy, but you know, making and showing and making Cortez the best Cortez it can be. It's a great city. Let's show it off. Let's make people love us. And they love us, they'll be here. Because that's the decisions they're making. They're willing to pay a little bit higher taxes. They're willing to pay the taxes in Boulder, which are almost 10%, to bring a big conglomerate in there because, not that I like Boulder, but Boulder has an appeal. You know, there's lots of recreation. Well, Colorado has an appeal. And they weren't just selling the state, they were selling Colorado. But we need to sell Cortez. We need to make it, and I don't know, I don't have all the answers, but we just need to make it a place where somebody wants to come in, and we need to start it by not, you know, trying to strip down some of these restrictions and say, hey, listen, yeah, we want you here. Here's what we're going to do to help you as a city to be here. Explore out-of-the-box ideas to get them here.
I got a question for all of us. This might be a good indicator. Sometimes it can get confusing between do we want Cortez to be what it was and we don't want it to change, or do we want it to grow, and how do we want it to grow? Maybe a good question be like, how many of us here would like to see Cortez grow and attract more and new business and become bigger? I would raise my hand to that. Does anyone else want to raise their hand to that?
Well, kind of to answer you, Justin, I'm working with you in the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
They always tell us, you know, restaurants come and go, and they always drilled into our heads demographics. Get the demographics of what the town needs, not what they want necessarily. We have lots of restaurants with wants. You know, as you can tell, we have multiple of them. It's what the people wanted to run, not what we needed as a community.
You mean we don't need another Mexican restaurant?
Yes, that's what I'm trying not to be, yeah, but yes, sir. Anyway,
you sure?
Chinese? Okay. So if we can get back to, I mean, the land use code going away kind of, again, benefits a lot of like these, I guess, corporatized companies. I'll just throw one out there, like Texas Roadhouse, just to throw it out there. They have like a set way they do things. So we kind of, as a community, if we want those things, or if we want that, then, you know, if we would like that here, they have their corporate standards that show a profit for them, that beneficial to them. That's how they do things. That's how they run things, because that's how they've already went through the rigmarole, and that's how they have a beneficial business. So allowing us, I mean, I truly believe that it's hard to give people tax breaks to come in here new, but offering that with offering like in-town employment, things like that, there could even be the option of, let's just say, take a 5-year and go out to the companies, and if you hire 20 more people, you get a 0.25% tax break type deal. I mean, I truly think that we could benefit people while helping other people, even the existing businesses, because having these places are going to bring other people to our town, which are going to go to their business. Yeah, they're not going to pay as much in taxes, or they have to pay more in taxes, yes, but they don't have to do that all the time. You can put time limits and things on those. So truly we can do this and do it correct for everyone and include the people that are here if it's something that people are willing to want to do, which I haven't seen yet.
I think we're going to have to call this to a halt here pretty quick. We would like to mention to our watchers on the video on Facebook and later, if you have questions that you would like to be presented to this panel of our candidates, if you could send those to our email address on Four Corners 912, and we can consolidate those and come up with some good questions for our next meeting, because these guys are going to be back with us, and I think in one open meeting where the public will be invited, and we'll have questions to present to them, and you'll have a chance to buttonhole them afterwards and your personal questions. So if you have questions, please send them into our email address, Four Corners 912, and we'll get those put together for us. Bud, do you have anything else you want to?
Well, the email address is fc912, that's all spelled out, fc912@gmail.com. Also, for those that are going to see this on Facebook, you can put something on the comment section there, and we'll call those questions also. And what we're going to do at the March 12th is, because the public can oftentimes be repetitive or redundant, they will submit written questions to us, and then we'll kind of, if 6 or 7 questions seem to be similar, we'll try to combine that into one so that you don't have to repeat yourselves. And finally, before I shut the microphone, in fact, y'all's microphones are off, we appreciate y'all coming. We appreciate you standing up to run for city council. We never understand why people would run for public office. And I did it. And I don't know why I did it. It's nuts sometimes when you try to figure this stuff out. It's really nuts. But we appreciate that you do it. You're cut off. Yeah. Mr. Vasterling asked me if I had any advice. The popular advice is, don't say anything particular. That's what you'll get from political consultants. Just go out there and, just go out there and mumbo jumbo and so forth and so on. Don't tell people how you think. Don't tell people how you might see a particular issue. That's the popular political advice. I find it to be wrong in the sense of, are you going to be honest with the voters that you're trying to attract? I find that to be very dishonest. However, what I also found out was, since I spoke about particular issues and how I viewed them, I lost. So there, make up your mind. So be yourself. Just be yourself. If you have a position on something, say so. If you don't, admit you don't know, but I'll find out. Okay? I mean, we deserve to know who you are, what you are, how you think, and why you think that. That's what our questions were trying to elicit from you tonight. Not what you think about 01.01.04 of the land use code. We want to know how you would get to a decision, not whether or not that was good or bad. See the difference? There's a huge difference there. So that's what we were trying to elicit. We anticipate that when the public is here and submitting questions, or maybe on Facebook, that they'll be more specific, because the public is going to focus on point by point by point. Why haven't you fixed the pothole in front of my house? That's what you're going to get. So that's just the way it is. Again, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it very much.